it is not just the understanding, but also to see that our heart is open to a very important truth that is little understood. And I thought that we will spend our time and connect it to the work that we do here in this hospital. So, this theme that we are going to discuss is the second mile, walking the second mile, the reality of God's kingdom. The reality of God's kingdom. Maybe if we can put off that light so that you will be able to see a little better. I think you will be able to hear me. How many of you have heard the term walking the second mile? You know, you are supposed to walk the second mile. You have heard, let me see your hands. Have you heard walking the second mile? I'm sure we all have heard that. But we need to understand from where it has come and what's the meaning of it. And quickly we will be able to look at it. There was a little boy who, in the evening, you know, after playing, mother had brought a nice soup, warm soup, it was cold, and he was having the soup. And he asked this important question. He said, "Mom, are insects good to eat? Are insects good to eat? You like to eat insects?" Nobody would like to do that. So mom got very upset and said, "Son, this is not the time to discuss about those things. You just shut up and finish your soup." And so he said, "Okay, Mom." He finished eating. Then somewhere before he could sleep, Mom went to him and asked him. He said, "Son, you asked me about, is it good to eat insects? Why did you ask me that?" And he said, "Mom, I saw an insect in your soup that you're eating. And I wanted to tell you, but you told me to shut up. Anyway, you have eaten that. There's nothing I can do." So many times, you know, we do not have the opportunity to contribute what we are supposed to do because of our probably unwillingness to listen. So, what is the second mile? Let's quickly go on. Time is running short. We are already almost around 9 o'clock. But let me see if we are able to grasp a little bit. This is where we take it from Matthew, the 5th chapter and verse 41. Jesus is simply saying this: whosoever asks you to go 1 mile, what do you need to do? You need to walk the second mile. Let me ask a simple question. Is it a suggestion or is it a command? Is it a suggestion or is it a command of Jesus? Is Jesus suggesting something or is he commanding us to do it? Any answer? It's a command. It's not a suggestion. He's not just saying, "Oh, it will be nice if you are able to walk the second mile." That's not what Jesus is saying. In fact, Matthew the 5th chapter is talking about the principles of God's kingdom. Jesus is saying, if you want to belong to God's kingdom, that's the only way. You have to walk the second mile. Jesus was giving the command. So, as you said, open the eyes of my heart. The first thing you need to understand is Jesus is not suggesting. It's not an opinion. Jesus is commanding us. And if we are followers of Jesus Christ, we must take this seriously. So let's begin to understand. Jesus also went ahead and said in Mark the 8th chapter, "Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and my words, he will be ashamed in the kingdom." Connect these two things. If Jesus has commanded us something and we are ashamed to follow that, and when we want to go to God's kingdom, what will happen? He will be ashamed of us. Am I right? You all agree with that? There is no two ways about it. If we have to belong to God's kingdom, you must hold on to the teachings of Jesus Christ and take it seriously. Because Jesus had said that he will be ashamed if we are ashamed of practicing what he had said. Let me give you different illustrations in the Bible of people who are privileged to know the truth and yet did not take it seriously. The people during Noah's time, you know the story. What had happened? Were they privileged to know the truth? Yes or no? Yes. But did they make it? No. Why? Because they didn't take it seriously. They thought that what Noah is saying is something, it was not going to happen. Let's look at another example. This is the example of Esau. You know the story of Esau, isn't it? Was he privileged to know about God? Yes. Did he take it seriously? No. In fact, when he wanted a blessing, the Bible says he was crying with tears to have the blessing. Did he get it? He didn't get it. Let's look at another example. Judas. Was he privileged to know the truth? Yes. But did he receive it? No, because he didn't take it seriously. The last example that we have are the 5 foolish virgins. Were they privileged to know about the bridegroom? Yes. But did they take it seriously? No. The saddest event that can happen in our lives is that we call ourselves Christians, we call ourselves SBAs, we work in Christian institutions, and at the end, when we knock the door, God is going to say, I don't know you. That is the tragedy of our life. The reason is none of them have taken it seriously. They just went along with their life thinking that automatically they will find an entrance into God's kingdom. They all did not get it. In the same way, if we don't understand the second mile, we will also end up in disappointment. Whatever you do in life, this is not a teaching of the church or something that you think about in the church. This is something that you do in your profession and where you are on a daily basis, day by day basis. We must be able to understand this. So let's quickly go on to understand what is the second mile. From where did this come from? Jesus was talking about events that are happening during his day. In those days, the world was ruled by Rome, the Roman government. And therefore, by law, a Roman soldier can come to anyone and ask them to carry the load that he's carrying for 1 mile. And every citizen has to oblige by carrying it. You understood? It was in those days, that was the custom, that was the law, that's a government law. Why is it is like that? The reason is because Rome was ruling the world, and therefore they had to protect its citizens. The soldiers had to go, they didn't have motor vehicles, and the soldiers had to go by foot, go to the border, protect from the enemies. So because they are protecting, the citizens had an obligation to help these Roman soldiers by law. But those days, the roads were not very good. You know, they were cobblestones like this. It was a difficult thing, but it was by law. Jews hated this. You know why they hated it? First of all, they consider themselves to be God's people. They didn't like anyone trying to control them. And on top of that, forcing people to carry their goods for 1 mile is something that was not acceptable to them. How did this come about? It actually came during the time of Medo-Persia when Cyrus was the ruler. He wanted to have the communication, the courier system that we have like today, taking parcels from one place to another. In order to see that it becomes effective, he made it as a law that the citizens are supposed to carry for 1 mile. If the parcel has to be taken, and if you're going that way, you are supposed to take it by law. Nobody should refuse it. The Romans, what they did was, they took that and then imposed it upon their government rules so that people will be able to help the soldiers carry it on. Perhaps you might be thinking, so what is the big deal about it? It is a big deal because if you see a soldier have to carry, if you see, almost 12 things. He has to carry the saws, he has to carry the forks, the spades, the shovels, the pickaxe, even the wheelbarrow, a small wheelbarrow. They have to carry a pickaxe, an axe, a hatchet, and a hook, leather, and also 30 kgs of food they are supposed to carry. So if you are the citizen living 2000 years ago, how much should you carry now? More than 30 to 40 kilos you are supposed to carry. A soldier has the right to ask you to carry. For how much? For 1 mile, how many kilos?
40
Easily around 30 to 35 kilos you're supposed to carry. Would you like that? And that's the reason why people didn't like it, but it was a law. What would happen if you don't carry? They would publicly flog you. If you do not oblige, they will take you in front of the public and flog you and say you didn't obey the government law and therefore you are supposed to carry. So there is no way that you are supposed to, you can refuse it. But this was not a very easy thing. You know why? Because if they have to carry 1 mile, it is not just 1 mile. Let's look at an illustration. Johnny is here. Johnny, I want you to come here, and as you come, I want you to see how many steps you are taking. Okay? How many steps? 6 steps, isn't it? How many steps did he take? How many? He said he took 6 steps. But it is not just coming. You are supposed to go back. So you go back now. So how many steps did he take?
12 steps.
12 steps. If you have to carry 1 mile, how many miles you have to walk?
2 miles.
It's easily 2 miles. You're on the road and suddenly the soldier comes and says, now please come and carry this. You're supposed to carry it, dump it there and come back to your place. So how many miles you're covering?
2 miles.
2 miles. You have to stop your work and go ahead and do that. So it was not an easy thing. Now let's look at what Jesus was trying to say. Look at it carefully. It says, and whosoever, talking about anyone, not only the soldiers, shall compel you. What's the meaning of compel? Or force you to go 1 mile. How much you have to go? 2 miles. In other words, if anybody is forcing you to do something, you have to go the extra mile. You know how much that means? How many miles now you have to walk? How many miles? How many miles you have to walk?
4 miles.
You have to walk 4 miles, isn't it? In other words, if a soldier comes and says, now you take this for 1 mile, it's not only that you're covering 2 miles, you have to go another extra mile and totally you're covering. That means 2 miles to go, 2 miles to come back. Totally you'll be covering 4 miles. Let's talk for a while. Was Jesus suggesting or commanding? Jesus is suggesting or commanding?
Commanding.
I'm not hearing it.
Now he suggested.
Now he's suggesting. This is not a suggestion. This is a command. This is a command. What Jesus is saying is a command. And if it is a command, you know what's the command? Government order. If government says wear the mask, is it a suggestion or a command? It's a command. Jesus is not trying to plead with us and say, please go 2 miles. He's telling us we need to go the second mile. Now, I don't know whether my time will permit. I'll just take another 5 minutes. Wherever it finishes, I'm going to stop right there and we'll continue from there onwards. Why is it that Jesus is asking us to go 2 miles? I tell you the reason. This is the 1 mile experience. It is a corporate model. Whereas 2 miles is a divine model. Do you understand the difference? A corporate model where it is forced. We are all in a corporate model, isn't it? You have come for employment. Whether you like it or not, you have to come on time. You have to do things in a certain way. It will be enforced. Am I right? You have no other choice. This 1 mile is compulsory. That's what Jesus said. If somebody forces you, in other words, if it is an obligation, you must be able to do it. It is forced. It is legally bound. In other words, if you don't do it, what will happen? You have to find another place. It is legally binding. There is a recruitment process. In other words, you are going to say, are you willing to follow these rules and regulations? And what do you say? You say, yeah, I am willing to follow. Then you say, you better be there. So there is a compulsion that is involved. It is duty and it is mandatory. Whether you are willing or not willing does not apply here. Am I right? The first mile is once you agree to it, you must follow it whether you like it or not. first mile experience is something. And how many people are happy in the corporate model? How many people are happy? You're not happy. Even though the salary is given, even though you have written the agreement, even though you say yes, you want to do it, how many people are happy? Not many people are happy. The 1 mile experience. When Israel or when the Jews carried the load of the soldier, how many of them were happy? How many of them were happy? No one was happy. But it was a law. You need to follow it. But Jesus says, there is another model. And in this model, you are supposed to walk the second mile. That is the only way. That's the only way in God's kingdom. And in this model, is there a force? There's no force. It is totally voluntary. There are no legal implications. Nobody is going to say, sign this contract. You have to decide for yourself whether you want to walk the second mile or not. It is willfully done. And how many people are there walking in the second mile?
Few.
There are very few. There is no advertisement. Nobody is going to say, oh, he's walking the second mile. Will there be anyone? No. In the first model, you all are seen because you're all in the working place. But when you go the second mile, there's hardly anyone who notices you. Isn't it? It will not be noticed. There won't be any propaganda. It is based on the example of Jesus Christ. And only those who are willing and understand will find the joy of following the second mile. You understood the difference between the first mile and the second mile? How is it possible that we can go from the first mile experience to the second mile experience? You know, how is it possible? In the first mile experience, you need supervision. Am I right? Yes or no? If your supervisor is absent, it's a holiday that day, isn't it? If the medical director is not there, party. Worship, you don't have to worry, you can come anytime you want. Ego is alive. Because even when you do that and say, oh, why you didn't come? Oh, doctor is always asking me why I am coming late and all that. Ego is always touchy. Your supervisor says, why you didn't do that? Oh, this lady is trying to boss over me. In the first mile experience, ego is alive. And in the first mile, you can pretend. You can come to Giri and say, medical director, what is it you do? And suddenly he comes, yes sir. What do you want me to do? Pretension in the first mile experience, it's a pretended obedience. There's no reality, it is all faked. Always ready to fight for your rights. Oh, I worked for that half an hour extra. Or I did this, they didn't even think about me, they're not even bothered about me. It's all in the first mile experience. And you're always thinking about comfort and convenience. Even within that time frame. And they say, Paulson, you're here, isn't it? From 8:30 to 5. Can you go and do that? No, sir, I'm already busy here. Even within that time frame, you're only thinking about your comfort. You're only thinking about your convenience. Oh, my lunchtime, I cannot do this. It's all in the first. And at the end of the day, you get only temporary satisfaction. But I want to tell you this. You and I can never be found in God's kingdom with first mile experience, no matter how faithfully you do this. Unless we walk the second mile. And it can only happen through the cross. Only when self dies, you'll be able to enter the second mile. The second mile experience is the experience of a servant. There is a willing, voluntary submission. Self is totally crucified. Ego does not count. Ego does not manifest itself. It is very genuine because it is voluntary. Is anyone asking you to go the second one? No. You volunteer yourself and say, yes, you want me to go 1 mile? I'm ready to do it. So when you are going the second mile, there is no issue of ego. You are genuine. There is no pretension in walking the second mile. You can only walk the second mile when you are willing to give up your rights. Your time, your money, your aspects of it totally has to be surrendered if you have to walk the second mile. In this second mile, you have to forget yourself completely. You cannot exhibit yourself and walk the second mile. And you know what? At the end of the day, you have the joy that you can ever have in this life and in the life to come. Our time is up and I need to stop here. Perhaps when we find a little more time, we'll look into that. But I hope you are able to understand the difference between the first mile and the second mile. Jesus is not pleading with us. He is commanding us. He is asking us if we are to be His children. He wants us to walk the second mile. Not because somebody is forcing us, but because we are His followers. We are going to see that a little later on. Why is it that we need to follow the second mile? I hope that we have understood this. May God help us. This is not something that to be preached about. I have to do it, you have to do it. We all have to be found in God's kingdom. May God help us today. And I want to throw a challenge today as you are going to go for your work. How many of you think that you will have opportunities to walk the second mile? Will you have opportunities to walk the second mile? We all will have opportunities. May God help us that we might be able to walk the second mile without grumbling, without murmuring, because we are doing it not for ourselves, it is for God's glory. And hopefully we will understand more as we go along why we need to walk the second mile. Shall we all stand up for prayer? Our gracious, loving Heavenly Father, this morning, you have opened to us the mysteries of God's kingdom. We want to be a part of them. Many times, O Lord, we have heard these things over and over again, but it has not gone into our heart today. You know, Lord, self is very strong. It does not want to break down and give up itself. I pray, O Lord, as we begin to understand these things first, that each one of us, that we will understand the principles of walking the second mile. Help each worker, because there are people who are coming to this institution today that requires people who can show the second mile. They are looking for a manifestation of your glory in this place, in the things that we do, in the words that we express. Oh, how much we need your divine grace, so that we might truly reflect you in all that we do. Empower us with your Spirit to walk the second mile, because I pray in Jesus' precious name. Amen.